Welcome to Mindful Living with Nurse Stacy, where I'll take time to unpack the things that matter most, that spirit, growth, and the heart of who we are. I'm your host, Stacy Scott, and today we're going to talk about the most powerful force in existence, and that's love. Not just love as a feeling or as a relationship status, but love as an organizing power, a spiritual principle, a way of being. We're going to explore how love begins with God, how it flows into our understanding of ourselves, and how it empowers us to love others. And lastly, we'll dive deep into the fruit of that love, how it expresses itself through peace, joy, patience, and more. So get comfortable, take a deep breath, and let's explore the divine order of love. I want to start off by saying love begins with God. To understand love, we must first understand where it comes from. And scripture is clear in 1 John 4 and 8, where it says, God is love. So God is not just a being who loves, He is the essence of love itself. That means love is not man made, it's not earned, bought, or bartered. It begins in the heart of the Creator. Think about it. Love created the universe. Love breathed life into humanity. Love sustains us, even when we don't feel worthy of it. So again, God is love, unconditional love. It doesn't depend on your performance. Now, there's a biblical example of unconditional love of God, the unconditional love of God. And it's found in Luke 15:11 through 32 when it talks about the prodigal son. And many have heard this story over and over. Jesus tells a story about a young man who asked his father for his inheritance early, which was the equivalent of saying, I wish you were dead. He takes the money and he leaves home, wasting everything on reckless living, partying, and gambling, bad decisions. Eventually, he finds himself broke, hungry, and alone. He was feeding pigs just to survive. Then that led him to becoming broke, ashamed, and so he decides to return home. He plans to tell his father, I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. Just make me a servant. So that must have been a very humbling experience for him. But listen to what happens. While he was still a long way off, his father saw him coming and was filled with compassion. He ran to his son, embraced him, and kissed him. That's in Luke 15 and 20. The father doesn't shame him, or his father did not shame him. He doesn't lecture him. He doesn't make him work his way back into the house. He runs to him, restores him, dresses him in the best robe, and throws a big celebration. So, what this shows us is the son thought he had to earn love again, but the father's love was never, or it was never, ever, never, ever canceled, not even for a moment. Love doesn't start when we get it right, and it doesn't stop when we mess up. So I want to share a real life parallel, like something that would seemingly happen in this our day and time. Maybe you've made choices you regret. Maybe you walked away from your faith. Maybe you think I've gone too far. But what does God love says? You may have given up on me, but I've never given up on you. It's unconditional love. And what unconditional love means is there is no prerequisites, there is no performance, and there's no earning it. Just pure grace, just pure mercy, just pure love. Not something, but not sometimes, but always, all the time, and every time. So here's a real life modern day example and a testimony of someone, not mine, but one that will resonate with many. It's powerful and it illustrates the unconditional love of God. I'll name this real life example the addict who came home. So, a young woman grew up in church, active in the youth groups, loved God, prayed daily, but in her late teens, she got pulled into a destructive relationship and began experimenting with drugs. Now, over the next few years, her life spiraled. She became addicted to heroin, was arrested multiple times, and completely distanced herself from God, and she distanced herself from her family. She felt unworthy. She felt dirty and beyond redemption. Every time she would look in the mirror, shame whispered, God doesn't, or God can't love someone like me anymore, or God can't love you anymore. One day, that overdosing began. She had an overdose. And when she was revived in the hospital, something stirred her spirit, and she remembered the prayers of her grandmother who used to pray over her. And lying in the hospital bed, she whispered, God, if you still love me, I need you. I don't know how to come back. Now, she didn't hear a loud voice, but she felt a peace that overwhelmed her pain. And for the first time in years, she felt safe. She felt loved, not because she was clean or fixed, just because. So, what happened next? She entered into a rehab and relapsed, not once, but twice. But she never stopped talking to God. And each time she fell, she expected punishment, but instead, she felt grace. Now, years later, she was sober. She's helping others in recovery and back in her faith. Do what you believe in her testimony is, or what do you believe her testimony is, or what do you believe her testimony was? It was God didn't wait for me to clean up before he loved me. He loved me and he met me in my mess. So, what's the lesson in this? God doesn't say, clean yourself up and come to me. He says, come to me and I will make you clean. Now, that's unconditional love. There's no fine print, there's no background checks, just open arms, even when we've wandered far off. God's love is organizing, it brings order out of chaos. And a biblical example of that is when Jesus was calming the storm. It's found in Mark 4:35 through 41. The disciples were in a boat, and I know many people have heard this. They were in the boat with Jesus when a violent storm hit. The waves were crashing, the wind was howling, water was pouring in. These experienced fishermen, they were totally terrified. In the middle of all the chaos, Jesus was sleeping. The disciples cried out, Teacher, don't you care if we drown? Jesus got up. He spoke to the wind and the waves and said, Peace be still. And instantly, when he said, Peace be still, the chaos became calm. So, what can we learn from this? The storm represents chaos, it represents fear, anxiety, and loss of control. Jesus' presence and love didn't just remove the storm, he brought order to it. His word, flowing from his love, had power over the natural and power over the spiritual world. So, how does that show up in real life? When life be lifing, how does that show up? You might be going through a personal storm. It may be an emotional breakdown. It could be a financial crisis, a relationship fallout, or mental anxiety. When you invite God's love into that space, He doesn't just watch, He speaks peace. He provides clarity and grounds you in His presence. Love isn't passive. God's love is a stabilizing force. It calms your mind, it restores perspective, and brings peace into that once overwhelmed you. It's powerful, it's personal, and always on the move. He doesn't wait for you to clean yourself up. He runs towards you, fights for you, and never lets go. That's the kind of love you can count on. It has redemptive qualities. It makes all things new, meaning it doesn't just forgive your past, it reclaims it, it restores it, it restores value and repurposes it for your good. Now, here's a compelling example that shows that clearly. And the biblical example is when Peter denies God and when Peter is restored. And that's in Luke 24:54 through 62, and John 21:15 through 19. Now, Peter was one of Jesus' closest friends. He was bold, passionate, and fiercely loyal. Jesus told, he told Jesus, even if everyone else abandons you, I will never abandon you. But a few hours later, when Jesus was arrested, Peter denied him. How many times? 3 times, even swearing, I don't know the man. And after the third denial, the rooster crowed. Jesus turned and looked at Peter, and Peter wept bitterly. Now, in that moment, Peter was shattered. He was full of shame, disappointment, and guilt. So, what happened? Peter had failed in the very moment he thought he'd be strongest. Now, the redemption part of this is after Jesus rose from the dead, he found Peter, not to rebuke him, but to redeem him. Jesus asked Peter 3 times. He said, do you love me? 3 times. Do you love me? Do you love me? And each time Peter said yes, Jesus replied, feed my sheep. Now, why did he ask him 3 times? Because Peter denied him 3 times. And it wasn't that he just asked him that, it wasn't that he was just like rubbing it in. He was healing the wound. He was replacing every denial with purpose. Then Jesus restored him, not just to friendship, but to leadership. Peter went on to become one of the boldest voices in the early church. Now, what this teaches us is God's love is redemptive. Redemptive because it doesn't leave you broken, it rebuilds you. It reclaims your failures and turns them into a testimony. It qualifies you not in spite of your past, but often because of it. God doesn't just erase the pain, He gives it new purpose. Now let's bring it into the modern day parallel, something that would happen in today's world. Now imagine a man who spent years in prison for gang activity and violence. While he was incarcerated, he encountered Jesus through a prison Bible study. Slowly, the word began to change him. Years later, after release, he didn't hide his past. Instead, he now leads a ministry for at risk youth, the very kind of young people he used to recruit. That right there is redemption. Turning your worst chapter into a manual for someone else's breakthrough. How powerful is that? So, finally, keep this thought. Just think about this. God's love doesn't just forgive, again, it restores. He doesn't throw your broken pieces away. He picks them up, reshapes them, and creates something more beautiful than ever before. So when you're rooted in the love of God, you stop chasing love and start living from it. An example of that is, imagine a plant that never gets watered. That's how we are when we try to live without God's love. We are dry, we're struggling, and we're disconnected. But when rooted in His love, we grow, we flourish, and we bear fruit. Now, another part of the organization of love is loving yourself through God's love. How powerful is that? And that's actually the second commandment that says, love your neighbor as yourself. That means self love isn't optional. It just isn't optional. It's essential. But let's be real, loving yourself can be hard, especially when you know your past, you know your battles, and you battle with insecurity, you feel unworthy. But here's the truth: God doesn't love a future version of you. He loves you right now, fully and completely. Now, there's three ways to love yourself through God's eyes. One thing you can do is you can speak kindly to yourself. That replaces self criticism with God's affirmation. And one of the affirmations you can use is, I am fearfully and wonderfully made. That's in Psalms 139:14. Another way you can do it is honor your body and your mind. Rest, eat well, breathe, because you are a temple. And another way, the third way, forgive yourself. God already has. Don't keep holding a grudge against yourself. So, an example of that would look like, think of how God responded to Peter after he denied Jesus 3 times. Did Jesus shame him? No. He restored him. That's the kind of love God shows. We must learn to show it to ourselves. Now, finally, another part of the organization of love is, yep, you might have guessed it, loving others. Loving others becomes natural when you're filled with the love of God and confident in your own worth. But loving others is not always easy. People can be complicated. Believe me, I know. People can be complicated, it's frustrating, and even hurtful, but still, we are called to love because we have been loved. Love is action, and here's what it looks like: showing kindness to a stranger or having patience with a family member. How about forgiveness towards someone who hurt you? And then you can also offer service to someone in need. An example of that would look like when Jesus was washing the feet of Judas. Even knowing Judas would betray him, that's love. It's not about deserving, it's about choosing. He chose to love or wash his feet in spite of knowing that. How about setting boundaries? There's not unloving, or boundaries are not unloving. Loving someone doesn't mean allowing abuse or dysfunction. It means showing respect, truth, and grace, even from a healthy distance if needed. Now, there's fruits of love. When God's love is alive in you, it produces visible fruit. And in Galatians 5:22 through 23, it tells us what that looks like. And it says, but the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, and temperance. Now let's explore each of these in real life terms. Love is the foundation. Love is not a feeling, it's a decision to act with compassion and care, especially when it's inconvenient. An example could be choosing to comfort someone else when you're tired. Now, when we're tired, we don't feel like doing nothing. And then another one, joy is love celebrating a deep gladness not tied to circumstances. An example of that would be feeling content even in a season of waiting or uncertainty. And then we have peace. Peace is love resting and inner stillness even when life is stormy. And an example would be the not panicking when life plans fall apart because you trust God's plan. Long suffering, ooh wee, that's patience. That's love enduring, staying committed through difficulty. An example of that would be showing grace to a family member who keeps disappointing you. Gentleness, that's love expressed softly. Speaking the truth in love, not harshness. An example of that would be correcting a child with care and not with anger. Goodness is love choosing what's right, having integrity, kindness, and moral courage. An example of that would look like returning extra change the cashier gave you by mistake. A lot of people don't like doing that. They think it's a gift from God. They think that, oh, I just been blessed. But no, it isn't. Faith or faithfulness is love staying, loyalty, reliability, steadfastness. An example of that would be showing up for your spouse, your friends, your purpose again and again. Then we have meekness, which is humility, love yielding, it's strength under control. An example of that would be letting someone shine or someone else shine instead of needing to be the spotlight. And then temperance, okay, self control. And that's love reigning over self, having discipline, having balance, saying no to what doesn't serve you. And an example of that would look like choosing not to react in anger when you're provoked. So, with love, joy, peace, long suffering, faithfulness, meekness, and temperance, you don't just manufacture these traits by pure willpower. They grow when you stay connected to the vine, and the vine is Jesus. So, just to recap, or just to give you a reflection and something you can do, love isn't just something we feel, it's something we become when we walk with God. It begins with God, it transforms how we see ourselves, it teaches us to love one another, and it grows beautiful fruit in our lives. Fruit that becomes healing, wholesome, and harmony. So, finally, I want to encourage you to just think about a few things. Take time today and receive the love of God. You don't have to earn it, just receive it. Let it sink into your heart. Let it shift your thoughts and guide your actions. So, you can do three small things. Reflect on which fruit of the Spirit is most alive in you today. Ask God to grow the one you feel you lack in. I'm definitely going to ask Him to grow. I know which one I lack in. Temperance, self control. And then another thing you can do is share this message with someone who needs to know they are loved. Now, in 1 Corinthians 13 and 13, it says these three remain: faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love. So thank you for spending time with me today. And until next time, stay rooted in love.